In order to write clearly, you must think clearly. It is my job to teach you to think clearly. It was 1974, and I was a junior at Marshall Senior High School in Nancy McLaren's honors English class. Those were the first words she ever said to us. Little did I know that her words some 40 years later would save me from a lifetime of food addiction, obesity, and despair. It is my hope that today I help you to think clearly. I stand before you today in possession of 3 things I never, ever thought it possible for me to have: peace around food, pride in my body, and the power to resist my grandmother's peach cobbler, my mother's lemon pound cake, my Aunt Dorothy's sweet potato pie, and anybody's bread pudding, especially if it has bourbon sauce on it. You see, I am a food addict. I'm a processed food addict. I am a sugar addict. In recovery for sure, but an addict nonetheless. But there are a few things I know for certain. I will never eat another whole gallon of ice cream, a whole pizza, a whole pie, a whole cake, a whole basket of biscuits, muffins, a whole plate of nachos, a whole box of Girl Scout cookies. I know now that those foods will never satisfy my deepest desires or needs. I know that now because I have clarity. But that has not always been the case. For years, I was confused. I unconsciously and mindlessly ate too much of the wrong stuff for the wrong reasons. I didn't even understand the real purpose of food. Every decision I made about eating was based on appearance, aroma, taste, and pleasure. Is it any wonder? I was bombarded, as we are all bombarded, with messages from messengers that tell us that food is something that it is not, that it can do something that it cannot do, that it has power that it does not have. Open happiness. Happy tastes good. Happiness in a box. Come hungry, leave happy. Spread the happy. Happiness in a bottle. How about a happy meal? This confusion led me to 40 years of emotional overeating, experiential eating, stress eating, binges, cravings, yo-yo dieting. For 40 years, between 1978 to 2018, I gained and lost over 700 pounds. That's a 7 and 2 zeros. And then, in early 2020, something happened. Something happened that fundamentally changed what I believe about food. COVID. When the pandemic happened, I had already lost 60 pounds on a doctor-approved weight loss program. That was nothing new. I had lost significant amounts of weight before, but always gained it back. But this time felt different. I desperately needed it to be different. For months, my doctor had encouraged me, might I say, strongly encouraging me, to write a cookbook with stories. And for months, I resisted. But COVID felt like a test. And to tell you the truth, deep down inside, I thought I might fail. So I decided to give the writing a try. What did I have to lose? In all my years of dieting, I had never kept a food log or a journal. But these were desperate times, and desperate times require desperate measures. And as I struggled with this cookbook memoir journal, this memory bubbled up. And I don't know if you can tell by listening to me, I'm from the South. And we were on my family farm in the South, and it was my uncle's farm, as a matter of fact. And my uncle, Frank Thomas Petties Jr., my uncle was a merchant seaman. He was my mother's older brother, and he traveled the world. He was what was known back then as a man's man, just a hard guy. We were on his farm, and he had retired by then, and we were having a barbecue kind of cookout. And in the South, when you have barbecue, you have a cookout, you bring out the watermelon. So we brought out the watermelon, and I asked Billy, because that's what he let us call him, because he was a cool uncle, then let you call him by his first name. Billy, do you want some of this watermelon? And he said, I don't eat watermelon. And I thought it was odd because I heard him. He didn't say I don't want it. He didn't say I don't like it. He specifically said I don't eat it. And I asked him why. And he resisted telling me, but I pestered him. And he finally broke down and told me this story. When he was a young boy, he and some friends got the bright idea in 1930s Marshall, Texas, that they would steal a watermelon. And so they did. It was a hot summer day. They wanted to do something fun and exciting to cool off on a hot summer day. So they stole a watermelon, and my grandfather, his father, found out about it. Two things to know about my grandfather. My grandfather was a railroad worker, and my grandfather was also a church trustee. And the one guy that a kid that just stole a watermelon doesn't want to meet is him. And when my grandfather found out about this, he wasn't happy. My grandfather beat my uncle. He beat him so severely that my uncle never ate watermelon again. My grandfather beat him because he didn't want anybody thinking that he was raising a thief or that he could not support his family. So when my uncle told me this story, this sadness settled over me. This sadness that I still to this day cannot even really process. But I did have a question. And I asked my uncle, I said, well, Billy, that's been a while. That's 60 years or so ago. Do you think maybe the lesson was supposed to be thou shalt not steal? My uncle looked at me squarely and intently, and for the last time said, I don't eat watermelon. So I let it go. With this story, what I call a food story, I got absolute clarity. My uncle was confused. My uncle confused the fear he felt around eating the food, the watermelon in this case, with the food itself. The memories he associated with watermelon were so painful, so traumatic, so unhappy, that even after 60 years, 6 decades, he could not bring himself to eat it. The food story that he associated with this food that he once loved as a boy was just too painful for him to want to experience it again. When it came to this fruit, my world-traveled, man's man, hard-living uncle was afraid. Thoughts of this fruit once filled him with happiness and excitement, now filled him with pain and fear. And when I think about the revelation and the understanding and the insight that I got from that story, I thought to myself, or I questioned myself, what if the opposite is true? What if my uncontrollable cravings, my desire for certain foods has everything to do with my need and desire to experience and relive the extreme pleasure that I associate with certain foods? The answers to these questions were like a big bolt of happy clarity. Just like my uncle, had painful feelings attached to these memories, I overate because of happy feelings that I attached to certain memories. That was the answer. At least it was part of the answer. It was a big part of the answer. For 40 years, I had confused food with happiness and a whole host of other emotions. Remembering this story, not just remembering this story, but understanding this story was like getting glasses and seeing clearly for the first time. I was in a fog and didn't even know it. I was just like my uncle. I was so excited. I was so astounded. I did something I had never done in 40 years of living. I looked up the definition of food. I went straight to Google. And there it was, in all the Google colors: nutrition, nourishment, energy. That's all food is. The only problem it solves is hunger. It is just fuel. And then my mind went to the many situations where I got the food and the feelings all tangled up. With each story that I remember, I could feel the chains of addiction loosening. With each connection that I broke, I could see that we live in a society that keeps food front and center during highly charged situations, highly charged emotional situations, from birthdays to funerals to everything in between. It is food. It is ever present as we move to and from one emotional state to another. It's just called living. It is the one thing found at the intersection of family, of race, of culture, of identity, of education, religion, economics, food. I realized that marketers had positioned food squarely, not as nutrition, nourishment, and energy, as Google said, but as joy, as happiness, as punishment, as reward, as salvation, as entertainment, as activity, as fun, as status, as comfort. They had hijacked our minds when it comes to food. And I realized that I was not the only one confused. The World Obesity Federation tells us that from 2015 to 2022, the adult rate of obesity has more than tripled. By 2035, according to the World Obesity Federation, 51% of adults will be overweight or obese. 4 out of 5 African American women, according to the CDC, are either overweight or obese. Confusion, food confusion, lack of clarity. It's been almost 5 years now since I scheduled a fashion shoot to celebrate the fact that I was no longer afraid of the mirror, the camera, the scale, or myself. People see me now and they say, "How did you lose the weight? How did you keep it off? What's your secret?" And for years, whenever I went on a diet, I just focused on what could I eat and how much of it could I have, leaning unsuccessfully and desperately into willpower, self-control, and self-discipline. Now, I just ask myself a few key questions. If this food will not give me not just the body I say I want, but the life I want, the health I want, if this food will not give me that, why am I eating it? Why this food now? Why this particular food now? And Am I hungry or am I something else? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Am I tired? Am I frustrated? I ask these questions before every bite of anything. These questions are my constant companions. They keep me in clarity. They give me clarity. They give me the clarity that I need to make decisions about what I'm going to eat, decisions that are based in nutrition and not addiction. The clarity to understand that I can access the feelings that I want without using food as a crutch. This clarity has made all of the difference. It is this clarity that has me on this stage today, that gives me something that I never ever thought I'd have. Peace around food, pride in my body, and the power to happily refuse my grandmother's peach cobbler, my mama's lemon pound cake, my Aunt Dorothy's sweet potato pie, and anybody's bread pudding, even if it has bourbon sauce on it. All because my favorite high school English teacher and my favorite uncle gave me the gift of clarity. And it is my hope that today that I have paid it forward and passed this oh so precious gift on to you. Thank you.